So what GitHub is basically, in a nutshell, is actually I have a slide for that. Aha. You add a social network to Git, you get GitHub. And that's basically what it is. And if it loads, I will show you. But the idea is that you have all these people with repositories. They have many projects, all these projects up here. You know, let's take something like Ruby on Rails. You know, what if Edgar wants to add a new feature? You know, what if you want to fix a bug? You know, how do you get it? How do you get it back to oh, what's his name? DHH. You can take a repo, you can fork it, you can basically clone it, right? You can make your changes, and then you can tell the guy upstream, say, hey, I made these changes, please accept them, right? And then what you start getting is this man, so much for GitHub. What you start getting is this field of collaboration, where you have multiple people who would have never, one, had commit access to make these changes, right? And two, would have never found out about your project had it not been for this system. And you have all these people collaborating, right? And without fear of retribution or fear of being laughed at, because they have their own repo. They can do whatever they want. It's only once something's good and they feel something works that they actually tell the person upstairs that, hey, go ahead and accept this, right? And so you join a network. Just like Facebook, right, where you have friends, right, and these friends have projects, right, and then we're talking about huge jQuery or like Ruby on Rails. Like that's a really cool thing if you go to explore GitHub, if it loads. Maybe that wasn't as good as you start looking at some of these bigger bigger repos that are in here, right, and you start looking as like the who's who of like computer science. You got Linux, you have Git, jQuery, you got a lot of the JavaScript frameworks, to Django, a lot of the web frameworks as well. You have Mongo, which is like CouchDB, which is a document-oriented database. You start getting some crazy stuff, like you got Hadoop, right, which is a MapReduce. You got whole programming language, which is Perl, Ruby, Clojure. You got the official mirror of this is subversion thing of V8, which is the JavaScript virtual machine that's used in Chrome. Go ahead. These are whole projects where basically, you can go ahead, you can clone them, you can make your own branches, and you can make changes, and you can merge things, and you can make something cool, and then keep it for your own or send it back upstream, A lot of people who are somebody, especially in the open source community, are on here. On here are in Bitbucket, which is like the mercurial equivalent of this. And so, definitely a couple things from this talk. And I wish I had more time. Actually, I wish I had internet. This time would be an issue. But please don't ever email anything ever again. It's not worth it. The really cool thing about Git, actually, that people forget is that if you want to mimic a centralized model, like you actually want to designate like it's not even something like a flag or a feature, it's just something that people agree on. If you want to designate a certain user or a certain server as the central server, you can. The patterns of how pulling and pushing and all that business work is decided on a verbal basis. There's not any code associated with that, right? You can totally do that. That's kind of what GitHub does, is that it offers a repo there, right? And that is somewhat of a centralized repo. So if people want to fork from you, they can fork from your repo on GitHub as opposed to the repo that's on your actual computer, right? And the cool thing about GitHub is that it's free for open source projects. So if you want to put some code and don't mind anyone looking at it, then you can go ahead and put it up. You got to pay a little bit of money if you want to use GitHub and are doing something that is private, right? Which I do actually for work. I pay for GitHub because I have a lot of projects that I don't want anyone looking at. But because Git stands on its own, there's no reason why you can't set up a server in ACM and actually just have Git. Oh, and for the absolute best excuse for you, not excuse. The reason for you using Git is I know for a fact the Linux machines in the labs have it. I was actually very surprised to learn that. I don't know if the Macs have it. I doubt the Windows boxes have it, but the Linux boxes do have Git in it already. So,
you say the last 3 minutes or so for some questions?
oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. So, the last statement, and I'll get to it, is like look Git up online, download it. It's like a package installer, so we'll just install and start learning how to use it. Oh, and that was the one last website I want to show you. It's called Git Ready. I don't know if it's .com or .whatever, but it's called Git, G-I-T, and then Ready. And it's actually personally my favorite site on resources for Git and actually kind of babying you through it. There's lots of books, etc. Go ahead.
Okay, did you do a quick demonstration because I actually want to know how to do this? How do you go from a previous version to a file? Say, like you just did a modification to a commit. How do you go back to the previous version?
Now, there's a couple ways. You can go to the previous. There's two different things of doing that, right? You can go to the previous commit, which is the whole repo, right? And then you can do the previous commit just on that file. You can do both.
Can you do it just on a file, just a quick demo of that?
If I remember. See, I never really try to do that.
Okay.
All
right. Which one's easier?
Well, let's find out. Git, right? Well, the cool thing is that you can do Git checkout, right? Well, what does that mean? Oh, here. And here's the other cool thing about this is that is that there's a wealth of knowledge just out of the command line, right? And so there's a couple of different ways to do that. And this is when I talk about, I did not talk about branching on purpose. That's something I left for you guys to discover, even though it's like the most important part about this, is that basically when you have all these commits, right, it's just a list of stuff, right? And so each of those commits has a number associated with it, right? And each of those, every change that happens in the, every change that happens on a file, right? Or I shouldn't say file, but definitely on the commit level, has a hash associated with it, right? And so at this point, I couldn't even tell you how to do it on just one file because I rarely do it, but I know for a fact it can be done because I've done it.
All right, can you do it on the whole commit? Just a quick demo of it.
Let's go back to. No? Oh yeah.
I think we need to have you back for a whole workshop, actually.
I don't know about that. Let's go here.
Thanks. People have cost of
There you go.
Okay, so now we're in the back. So in case like we mess up on one of our codes, that's what we do in order to get back.
Right. So now I checked out. It's interesting because there are so many different ways of doing this. What you could do is actually create a new branch, like a tree, starting from that.
We're trying to do this in the most succinct way, so I just want to know a quick demo. Okay, say I messed up on my code, I'm going to go back to the previous version. That's how I would do it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. There's still lots of pizza and donuts left, so feel free. Congrats. Make sure you signed in. Two things. Friday, we have women engineers at the beach. We still need volunteers. It's commenced from 11 to 2. Just meet us at the ACM room at 11 o'clock on Friday. If you want to help, you'll get an MSDNA account out of it. And also Monday, we have an event at a fundraiser at Avenue 3 Pizza. That's from 5 to 9. Please come out and support ACM and take the flyer with you so you can make sure you tell the cashier that you're ACM.
Well, you pretty much said it. By the way, if you guys want to help out with women engineers at the beach, make sure to email chair@csulb.acm.org.